Hello, I'm Linda Seith from The Layered Onion. Thank you for joining us. We will be listening to our amazing creators talk about their art and mental health. 48 million artists all over the world share this lived experience. The Layered Onion was formed to create a supportive community, allowing the creators to focus on their art, bringing their work from the shadows to receive the recognition and opportunities they deserve. Each podcast will feature an artist who talks about their work and mental wellness. Art is healing. We hope these discussions will inspire you to appreciate the stories behind the creations and, more importantly, inspire your inner creator. Together, we can tackle the stigma around mental health.
Could we just walk?
I'm Seema Shah, and I'm located in Vancouver, British Columbia, Canada. And Vancouver is on the unceded and traditional territories of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh nations.
Great. Well, welcome, Seema.
Thank you.
Maybe you could tell me about all the different art forms that you use.
Okay, yeah, I am both a visual artist and a writer. For the past 6 or 7 years, my focus has been largely visual art, but my creative journey started with writing probably over 15 years ago, and a lot of creative nonfiction and short bits of poetry, but mostly creative nonfiction. And in terms of visual art, I mostly work in the medium of collage, and that's really been my focus. But the writing and the visual art comes together often. In that text is often incorporated in my visual work, and that includes the piece that was in the shallot as well. So it's not a planned thing, but I like working with both, and it's sort of whatever happens in the moment. But I usually have been, the core of my work starts with visual these days, and then whether text is incorporated in one way or the other just kind of depends on what feels right in the moment.
So perhaps you could tell me what drew you to art, or how maybe talk about your art journey from writing to the visual artist to where you are.
I can. It's a long journey, and it's something that happened very gradually and organically. I'm not somebody who has always been, interested in art or creative, like as a kid, and was always doing some form of art. It was something that came to me later, and I think it was more something that started not as a conscious choice to be like, suddenly I'm going to work on art, or I want to write. It was something that grew from really initially from journaling and kind of dealing with a difficult time and trying to make sense of what was going on. And I had never journaled before, so it was something that I started to do, and then over time I saw bits and pieces of what I had written and how that could be elaborated or crafted in a way to create either short pieces of personal narrative, but crafting it in a way that kind of was more writing that I might share with other people in some form. And then over time, the art is something that also happened quite organically, working on visual art. So it's not like I had a plan. It's just something that grew over time. And I really think that, that this has come up before, and it's like it's difficult to summarize because it's been such a long and convoluted process, and there's so much to it. But there is a quote from David Bowie that I really like from an interview, that where he talks about really kind of what started with him, it's music, but just kind of relating that to my own experience, I felt that it really resonated with me. What he said, it might not resonate with everybody else, but for me, it really, I felt like it was a concise way of explaining why I create and why it's important to me. So I have the quote here. I always have it. It says, "Always remember that the reason that you initially started working was that there was something inside yourself that you felt that if you could manifest in some way, you would understand more about yourself and how you coexist with the rest of society." And I felt that really fit for me. And, again, like with writing and visual art, those are also just art forms, creative forms of expression that I gravitated towards and that I have innate um, I'm drawn to innately. And those are activities that I can work on and get lost in and lose track of time, and where I really want to push through and the difficult parts to finish a piece. And I enjoy working on the craft and growing as an artist. And I've tried other forms, including music, where I love music, but it's just not I think there's talent and there's hard work, and it's combining both of those things. And I know that people often say that if you can put hard work into learning an instrument, and I know I could, but there also has to be something that I find writing can be, and visual art can be, very difficult. And I'm going through a period right now where I'm really struggling with it, but I want to be working on it. And so I guess there's just something, we all have things that we're drawn to and interested in. And for me, writing and visual art is where creative expression lands for me. And so I enjoy working on it. And I also, in terms of the outcome, I feel like those are forms that I'm able to best express aspects of myself and experience that I'm not able to express other ways. So I guess that's kind of a long answer, but
Do you know, I've never heard that David Bowie quote. But super, super meaningful, and suspect that many of us can relate to that you just have this innate need to create, and then get some peace and in touch with yourself, and some peace maybe from it, right?
Yeah, and understanding. And I mean, there is something about the crafting of it, and the discovery, the process for me of discovery and learning more about myself as I'm doing it. And I think something innate, and I feel like it's an ongoing thing, like self-discovery, but also ongoing in terms of what he's talking about in understanding more about myself, as well as how I coexist with society. And I find that it's often something that's happening in the present, that I feel like I have some sort of reaction to. It might not. Sometimes it's just something I don't quite understand, but I feel like I'm working it out through a creative way helps me see what's at the root of it sometimes. And sometimes it's something in the present that's connected to something in the past. And like it's not always clear why I'm feeling a certain way, but I just feel like I need to do something beyond just trying to think about it. I need to kind of get to a deeper level and get beyond my logically trying to figure out what it is that's going on. So,
well, the first issue of the Shallot was on reflections of self, and that's kind of what we're really talking about, is art and using it in ways to connect with ourself and our surroundings. And so I know that your title for your piece was A Ghostly Fluorescence. And maybe you could describe a little bit how this piece came to be.
I can. And the thing, the Shallot, the issue being on reflections of self, that really, like, my work in general just tends to be very personal and reflective of my inner world. So really pretty much all my work is a reflection of self. I felt like the piece that is in the shell, I submitted it because I felt like it was maybe a particularly good fit with the theme. To me, it felt that way. In terms of how it came about, I can explain it, but only to some degree. But I can say that all my work, and this is no exception, it just is something that gets created intuitively. And as I'm working, I don't set out with a specific plan. I might have, like, if I see an interesting call, I might have a theme in the back of my mind, but I don't set out with like an idea up front. I just kind of see where things take me. And so, my decisions that I make are really based on what feels right in the moment and what starts to kind of unfold, the story that starts to unfold in front of me. And when I'm really immersed in the creative process, it's really hard for me to remember exactly how and why the different dots are connected along the way, like, and in what order, like why I did this or when I did this, or which did this come first or did that come first. But for this piece, I can tell you that I did, there's a painting of a figure, a dark blue figure, that's faceless. It's just, and it's on a dark blue background, but the figure is darker. And then on the inside, I started to use this bright blue, green blue color. And as it was on the background, to me, it just really stood out and looked almost fluorescent. And that kind of is what came to my mind. And that triggered me to remember a little erasure poem that I did on a piece of like magazine text, or a blackout poem, where I blacked out different bits of text to come up with a short little poem. And it was like a little scrap that I filed away. I do that with a bunch of different things for collage, little scraps of color, images, words. So this was something that I had filed away. And I just, when I was thinking of fluorescent, I remembered, because I hadn't done it. I'd done it a while ago, but I could remember that there was something about like a ghostly fluorescence. So I was kind of like, oh, I should pull that out and take a look at it. And when I did and reread the text, I thought, oh, that would work. I think that would work really well with the image. And then I just played around with it. And when I was playing around with it, it was like, oh, I could actually fit this within the figure, within the kind of the core of the figure and the torso, and then use this fluorescent paint to paint over the parts that are blacked out of the text. And so these words that say, I found a ghostly fluorescence wired internally, just kind of embedded within the fluorescent part inside the figure. So that was sort of just something that came about as I was working. And some of the paint is also kind of dripping down into the lower body and the arms. And that was also something that just kind of, as I was painting, I was like, oh, it might be kind of cool to lift it up and see what that looked like, because that just seemed to fit with what I was doing. So that's how that came about. Often what I create is part of what I enjoy about it is that process of just seeing how things, what feels right and what ideas come to me as I'm working.
So I love the colors of this piece, first of all, and you're not going to be the first person I've told this on a podcast. Chartreuse green is my favorite color. It's my favorite color. And so obviously I was right away drawn in, because that just is, my eye goes straight. And as you were thinking about this, you go from dark into light, and it's, sort of internalize this light. Can you, to me, it actually made me feel really hopeful. So like things outside of you can feel overwhelming and dark, but internally there's this like little light that's, trying to keep us going and, be hopeful. That might not have been at all what you were thinking of, but, did you, when you put this all together, did you have anything you hoped the reader or viewer would take away?
Yeah, that's a really tricky, and an interesting question, but it's it's tricky because I mean, I love hearing what people see when they look at a piece or what they might take away from it. I don't have any set idea for what I hope somebody else might see or get from looking at a piece of my work, or this piece in particular. Um, I like I know what how I connect to it to a certain degree. Like sometimes I realize things after the fact, or even much after the fact. I like a lot of times I think of my work as kind of being similar to a dream, where it's like tapping into, at a subconscious level, and yeah, I'm creating it, and I have some sense, or I might have like some things might be clear during the process or right after, but then later, other things come to me, and there are layers to what I might be meaning, or what I might be for me, that feel like resonate for me. Um, but I don't really have. So when I create, I'm just creating in that way. I'm not creating because I want other people to necessarily have a set way of looking at it. I really, what I want is for people what I would like. I don't have a set idea, but I would like people, because everybody is so individual, both in terms of personal experience and what appeals to them in art. But my hope is just that, one, the work is viewed as art first and foremost, but also that um, would beyond that, just that whoever's looking at it connects with the piece in a way that's specific to their experience, and that it goes beyond the personal. So I so I hesitate to say how something, what it might mean to me, because I think I'd rather leave that for
Everyone
someone.
else to have their own interpretation.
Yeah, because I think if I say what my interpretation is, or what meaning it holds for me, I think that automatically changes it for the viewer, right? And so, I mean, I'm torn. Like I sometimes I feel like it's helpful to, if I know, or I like hearing what somebody is thinking when they've created a piece of art, if it intrigues me, and I'm interested in knowing what's behind it. But then it also does factor into how it's experienced by somebody else. So I mean, I do often hear people say things where it doesn't necessarily fit with what the work means to me, but I don't think it's any less, once it's out there, it's however that a viewer interacts with it. And I think because everyone is so individual, I think my hope would be that the emotional space that I'm in when I'm creating it, like people, if there are people who that experience resonates for them, that may be seeing my work, that they will connect to that. But if it doesn't, if my experience doesn't necessarily, it's not going to really resonate with everybody, that people will look at it and bring their own experience to it.
So one of the things that I really like about a piece of art is the layers, because in this case, when you looked at it far away, you don't really, because you put the words at I don't know, sideways.
Yeah.
You don't, that isn't the first thing you see, especially with the eye being so long. But as you get closer, then you notice, oh, it's words. And then you might turn it sideways in the shallot. And then but then the next thing you notice is you really do see how the other words were painted over. And that creates yet another layer of engagement with the piece. So I really appreciate art that has so many layers that you're just drawn in to try to see more. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, actually, that is one thing, in terms of when you say what I hope the viewer, what they leave, what I hope to leave with the viewer. I think that is part of it when I create that. When I said before that, like, first and foremost, that it's art. And I think that can be challenging, especially when art is presented within the context of mental health. So I think whether people relate to any kind of underlying meaning. But and I think that is often with my work, because my work is small and there's text and there's things, there are layers and things that you can only see, not just words, but also sometimes like even imagery wise, things that you can only see or that are covered with paint or partially covered that you can only see as you move in closer. But my hope is that from a distance that a piece still works just aesthetically. And so, the composition, the color, and that part of it, I find like I enjoy working with that, and I enjoy that challenge. So I hope that it works in that sense, as well as that there be some meaning. If somebody looks closer, that they see some meaning. It might not be something they can identify personally with. It might just be, oh, that's interesting or thought provoking, or that they connect with it in some way. But again, like what I feel or what it means to me is it's not because it's so personal that I don't want to reveal it, but I just think that it's not really it's about me, but when I share it with the world, it's not really about me and my story. It's about like what others see in it, not so much what it means to me.
So I have a question that I have come to really like asking folks, because I don't know, I'm learning about some new books and shows, etc. But some of us, I know I do, have a comfort book, or for some people it might be a movie or show where when they're kind of struggling, that they go to that, and it's like you're with a cast of characters that are your friends, or what's going to happen, so that brings some comfort. Do you have a particular book or show or something that is your comfort go-to?
Well, that's funny that you asked that, because I never have in the past, and I've never really thought about it. I've always been like, I watch a show and I don't go back and revisit it, really. I mean, it's pretty rare. But just in the past year that I have done that, and I've had 2 conversations recently related to that. And one was just talking to someone else who was talking about a show that they go to for comfort, but the other one was around this specific show, which again, this past year, I feel like I've gone back to it. And the show, it's a show, it's not a book. It's a show that I'd seen, I heard about, and I heard good things about, but it never really appealed to me to watch until, I don't know, sometime within the past couple of years, which is, I don't know if you watched it. It's on Netflix. It's Brooklyn Nine-Nine.
Oh, I have not. No.
And so it never really appealed to me. And then I started watching it, and it took me a few episodes, but once I got into it, I was hooked. And the writing is really good, and the humor, it just really appeals to me. And the cast of characters, it's just, most of them are very likable and 3-dimensional and diverse. It's a very diverse cast. And I think part of it is the humor, that going back to, even if I kind of remember generally even though, I mean, often I don't, my memory's not that good, but even if I remember generally what might happen in an episode, it's like, I don't remember the little bits of humor, and going back, it's something about that. And it's a show that ran for I think 8 seasons. So if you watch over that period of time, and there's these characters that you actually really like, and they're all quite different, but they just work really well together as well, their chemistry. And, after that much time, you've spent 8 seasons with them, you feel like you do know them and they're your friends. And I was just talking about this show to someone literally a few weeks ago, and I was saying, yeah, we were talking about some of the characters that we like, and he was like, yeah, it's like, I go, yeah, but going back and just watching them, and like you said, I mean, it's sort of like a comfort thing. And I even though there are other shows that I think, oh, I want to watch this new show and I haven't yet, I just keep going back to this. And I was just naming some of the characters, and then he was like, yeah, it's like they're your friends. And it's like, yeah, it is like that. And it is, there's something just really comforting about it.
Yeah, and actually someone else told me Brooklyn Nine-Nine. So now I probably will have to look into
It's
it.
worth it. Yeah, I really think it's yeah.
It's just to me, sometimes when there's so much, I'm just going to use the word chaos, but chaos out around us, to just have a place to go that, feels like, the outcome. Just there's something about that can be comforting.
Oh, that's true too. Yeah.
So, any last words of wisdom that you would want to share with other artists that face similar lived experience challenges? Advice you would give?
I would say just really, again, I mean, one thing along with watching Brooklyn Nine-Nine, one thing that is, and this has been a long-standing thing that I like doing, is reading or watching interviews with lots of other people, but particularly with artists who I admire, whose work I admire, but also who speak to me as artists that I feel like, in terms of their artistic integrity and just who they are in the world and what they do with their work. And so one of the artists who I really admire, and an interview that she did where she was talking and giving advice, to artists. It was like from a series, I think, called Advice to Young Artists, and is Patti Smith. And it's a short clip, but I go back to it often. And I like it so much that I've done these workshops the past couple of years for artists with lived experience, of mental health challenges. And I've shown this clip because I just think it's helpful. But I think it's helpful to all artists, and really to anyone, because she applies it to art, but then she talks more broadly about how what she's saying really applies to life in general, but really with respect to art, what she says. I mean, the bottom line of what she says is really, very simple, but it's easy to lose sight of, and that is really just to do good work, and really to stay focused on that. But the specific quote, because I love quotes in interviews, but the specific quote from her is advice that she got from William Burroughs when she was younger and starting out, which was, build a good name, keep your name clean, don't make compromises, don't worry about making a bunch of money or being successful. Be concerned about doing good work and protect your work. Protect your work, and if you build a good name, eventually that name will be its own currency.
Mm. What a lovely way to end our talk today, and something that I hope everybody reflects on. Seema, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for inviting me to be a guest, and for the Layered Onion and creating this, and the shallot. And it's incredible. And we've already done so much in the time that you've been around. And I'm looking forward to seeing and continuing to be involved and seeing how things move forward, and seeing other artists' work in the next issue. And it's exciting. So thank you.
Well, thank you, and stay well.
You too.
All right. Take care.
You too.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for joining us today. It is an honor to talk with these amazing artists. You can see and read the artist's work in The Shallot, our journal of mental health, art, and literature, or on our website, thelayeredonion.com. Thank you.